Thank you for your views, likes, subscriptions, and overall support of my ongoing efforts to bring great content to all of you. Check out my Patreon for more mature fanfiction. The link is in the description and like everywhere on my channel.
In the shadows for a long time, but no longer. He can only manipulate people so much. We can't hold an entire clan in the hideouts, Kankuro growled, looking up from his puppet parts. We're barely surviving as it is. Worst case scenario, they have to stay in the forest. You know no one can get in there, Naruto said, narrowing his eyes. No one they don't want, anyway. And I can fortify it with seals on top of that. Naruto, you know as well as I do that it won't work forever, Kankuro shot back. It'll work long enough for us to get a better hideout setup, Naruto insisted. I'm almost done with the space-expanding seal, almost done with constructing that other dimension. We'd need a gatekeeper for the seal, but once it's done, we can all be safe. Just give me another month or two. We can leave, Temari murmured, glancing around the cave they were in. Naruto cursed, glancing at his wrist. I'm cutting it close. I don't know when I'll be able to talk again. The remaining two Sand siblings nodded as Naruto plunged into a seal drawn on the wall and disappeared. Temari stared at it longingly. If only. If only, Kankuro agreed, turning back to his puppet. Hello, Mirai, Kurenai-sensei, Shikamaru drawled, waving to the pair. Good morning, Shikamaru, Kurenai replied, smiling at Shikamaru. How are you doing? Fine, I guess, Shikamaru yawned. Kurenai chuckled. Tired as always, I see. Shikamaru shrugged. Lots to be tired about. Been on a lot of missions recently. Anything too dangerous? Kurenai asked, brow furrowing in concern. Shikamaru shrugged uncaringly. Not too bad. Can't talk about it though, you aren't an active kunoichi anymore. Kurenai chuckled, looking at her daughter. I'm good raising Mirai. It is my hope she'll grow up in a better world than I did. It's already better, there isn't any war, Shikamaru pointed out. The landscape isn't desolate, and we're recovering quickly. We'll be back up to full strength soon. Kurenai nodded, looking out over the village, or what was left of it after the invasion. Soon. It was nice talking to you, Shikamaru, but I do have grocery shopping to do today. Shikamaru inclined his head. Of course. Have a good day, Kurenai-sensei. With that, he moved on, as slouched as ever, gliding along like he was mostly asleep. The entire conversation had conveyed two things: one, that Danzo wasn't trying to kill him just yet, and that Naruto's dimension that he was building was almost ready. Well, he wasn't precisely building a dimension so much as he was accessing the already there summons dimension and building a new place for them to live. It had been Kurama's idea, oddly enough. The giant fox had very reluctantly started to cooperate after Danzo said exactly what he was planning to do with him and Naruto in his earshot. At least Naruto tried to make it interesting and talked to him. Shikamaru sighed as a hawk circled over him once. Another mission. Perhaps he'd get out to see Temari again, or Sakura perhaps, he hadn't seen either in ages. It was pretty quiet without them around. As troublesome as they were, he kinda missed them. The entire thing took less than 2 minutes and was done without a word. Shikamaru collected the mission scroll, read and memorized it, then burned it in front of them before leaving to pack. It was near Sakura and Karen's hideout, close enough he could stop by for a short chat to see how well they were holding up. And perhaps give them a kimchi food scroll, as Naruto had taken to calling them. Naruto drew them up, the akimichi filled them with food, and they went with anyone who had a mission near one of the hideouts. The people inside got fresh food for once, instead of the ration bars they mostly had to survive on. They were surviving, living, and Naruto was working on a seal to save them. Shikamaru sighed, finishing up his packing and storing the scroll in one of his pockets. He had gone onto Danzo's radar. The mission would be too high for a normal chunin, and was probably a bit too difficult for him. As such, he was taking no prisoners, and taking all the precautions he could. His head was now on the chopping block. Shikamaru, it's wonderful to see you, Sakura greeted him. You just want the food, Shikamaru muttered, tossing the scroll to the two girls. Maybe a bit, Karen admitted, unsealing one of the fruits and biting into it. So, your head on the chopping block yet? Shikamaru sighed, half-lidded eyes staring her down. Yes. Sakura frowned. We don't have any more hideouts, you know that. Shikamaru nodded gravely. And so does Naruto. Karen growled, looking severely annoyed. Whether at herself or Danzo, it was to be determined. How close is the seal to finishing? Far enough that they'll get my body, Shikamaru replied, appearing, for all intents and purposes, to be asleep. I may have another option, Karen said, frowning slightly. It'll probably only work once, but we can try. Shikamaru cracked open an eye to look at her. Karen shifted, pulling out a large scroll. It's a space-time seal, like the one Naruto is working on, but its destination is another universe. And maybe back in time, I'm not sure. Can't really test it though. It doesn't send live things through, just their soul and chakra. And any weapons or clothing. That's specific, Shikamaru said, yawning. Karen shrugged. Best I could manage. It does leave a corpse behind, so it'd mean you could die on a mission, and they'd bring your dead body back as proof. No communication? Shikamaru drawled, closing his eye again. We have an idea, Sakura offered. But it still needs a lot of work. Basically, there are two scrolls, one with you, the other here. They are both the same scroll, and not. Anything written on one will be written on the other. Theoretically, there could be a bunch of secondary seals, so you could talk to one person instead of just talking and hoping that they're there and can see. The execution is what leaves much to be desired, Karen said, eyebrows furrowing as she frowned. She offered Shikamaru a scroll. See if Naruto makes anything of it. I'll drop it by him, Shikamaru said, sighing and taking the scroll. I should be going. They waved, and Shikamaru walked through the seal to get to the outside of the cave. The outside of the seal was hidden well inside a natural cave, so when Shikamaru walked out of it in the morning, it wasn't suspicious, as it was a perfectly fine place to take shelter for the night. They had counted on that, and that was how all hideouts were hidden. Hidden enough to not be suspicious, and hidden enough that no one accidentally stumbled across them. His mission completed, Shikamaru walked back into Konoha. He noted his completed mission, passed Karen's scroll on to Naruto, and went home for a nap. He was feeling actually tired more and more often now. Danzo was driving his shinobi hard, insisting they keep on top of normal missions on top of rebuilding Konoha. Heck, he couldn't remember the last time he sat down and played a leisurely game of shogi against someone. Probably before his father's death. His father, along with the other two parts of his generation's Inoshika Cho, had been killed on a particularly bad mission. They hadn't gotten help there fast enough. His mother was filling in for clan head, along with Ino and Choji's mothers. Shikamaru suspected they were getting more done than their husbands ever did. He was woken in the middle of the night by Naruto. Pest, Shikamaru. Shikamaru raised his head lazily to look at Naruto. What? Danzo. He's going to accuse you of treason and have you executed, he hissed. Shikamaru narrowed his eyes. Karen's seal? Naruto shrugged. As ready as I think it can be. The communication is also about as good as it's going to get. Come on, I got a mission for us, we leave now. You'll come back as a dead body. Shikamaru sighed, dragging himself out of his bed, and following Naruto. He was already packed from his earlier mission, no need to dawdle. They walked right out of the gates, Izumo and Kotetsu nodding once to Shikamaru, apparently already knowing he wouldn't come back alive. They traveled as quickly as they could manage, reaching Sakura and Karen's hideout in 2 days. Hello again, Sakura said, mildly amused as they walked into the cave through the seal. Danzo wants me dead officially, Shikamaru said. He intends to mark me a traitor and execute me as soon as I get back. So you won't, Karen finished, watching Naruto bring out the scroll she'd made. Shikamaru nodded calmly. Karen quickly scanned the seal, nodding when she finished. It should work fine. Shikamaru, get over here. Shikamaru cracked open an eye, then stood up and sat down next to the scroll. We have to draw these designs on your arms, Naruto said, almost apologetically. They should disappear once they're done doing their job. What's their job? Shikamaru asked, surveying the designs laid out on the scroll next to him. They tie your chakra and soul and mind together, along with a very slight link to the scroll you'll be going with, Karen explained quickly. Do you have a scroll with clothing? I'm pretty sure that your clothes will be going with you, and I'm assuming you didn't want your dead body to be naked when we bring it back. Shikamaru sighed in agreement, pulling out a scroll with extra clothing in it. You never knew when you might have to walk into some place after killing people, so it was best to have an extra set of clothing so you didn't turn up covered in blood. He unsealed the clothes, and Naruto took them. All right. Do you want a brief explanation about the scrolls? Shikamaru nodded, offering his arms for Naruto to draw on. So, you'll have one, and we'll have one here in this cave, Naruto started, holding up 2 scrolls once he'd finished inking the seals onto Shikamaru's arms. A band at his wrist, and a band above his elbow. The one staying here will be linked to me, the one going with you will be linked to you. I'm the least likely to die, so that's why. You two and the scrolls will function as anchor points, allowing us to be connected to where you're going. If one person or thing is taken out, either dead or destroyed, the other 3 can hold the connection, but the scroll or person needs to be replaced or the whole thing falls apart, Karen continued. Theoretically, we can use the seal once more to send another connected scroll through, but it's a heavy maybe. Understood, Shikamaru said, accepting the scroll Naruto handed him. If your scroll is destroyed, there is a fail-safe that makes it so the words written on our scroll will appear on your forearms until such time as we can get a copy of the seal across to you so that you can recreate your scroll. Karen quickly turned away as Shikamaru lay back onto the scroll. Sakura did the same, but continued sharpening the tanto she was carrying. Anything else will have to be communicated by scroll, we're kinda short on time, so good luck, have a safe trip, and don't die. Naruto said quickly, placing his hands on the seal next to Shikamaru's shoulders, and channeling chakra. Goodbye, Shikamaru managed, before blackness overtook his vision and he passed out. Chapter 2. He woke up staring at his bedroom ceiling. There were still clouds painted on it, so he was probably around 2-3. For his 4th birthday, he'd gotten his ceiling repainted into the night sky. He may be able to prevent the Hyuga incident. Depending on the time, he may be able to stop Hisashi's death. First things first, it wasn't morning yet, but would be soon, so he had to figure out what to do with his clothes. And the scroll. At this size, the scroll was longer than his entire arm. He couldn't just carry it around. His bed wasn't a crib. Most Ninja Clan children went from a crib to a bed around 1.5 to 2 years old, but he still couldn't shove them under the bed, as cliché as that would be. A storage seal may work, but he was pretty sure that he needed to be able to see the scroll at most times of the day, not just tuck it into a storage seal and hide it in his blankets. Or in that stuffed animal he remembered hiding most things in at this age. He would have to deal with it later. First things first, informing them he had made it safely and with the scroll. Shikamaru sat up, rolling out of his bed to pad softly across the room to his desk, before grabbing a pencil and going back to his bed. He opened the scroll to find a message already there. Naruto had to leave, and Karen's sleeping. Said Sakura. Shikamaru glanced suspiciously towards the door, checking his parents were still sleeping, not that no lights on really meant anything. I have arrived safely. Said Shikamaru. Oh, thank Kami. Said Sakura. On the plus side, I got to stab your corpse. Said Sakura. Shikamaru blinked at the scroll. That was a plus side? He quickly wrote that down. It's stabbing, always a plus side. So, I got an instruction manual scroll for the 2 scrolls. Kami knows when Naruto managed to write this up, so any questions can be asked of me. For now. Said Sakura. There is a limited amount of space on the scrolls, How will it work once it's filled up? Said Shikamaru one moment. Said Sakura. Shikamaru waited, checking the door one more time. Still no lights. Alright, so I guess when we reach the bottom it'll wipe itself clean. Then we can start over. I would suggest writing important stuff down somewhere else. Said Sakura. Alright. Thank you. Said Shikamaru. Anything else? Said Sakura. No, so I think I'll find a hiding place for this and go to sleep. Said Shikamaru. Haha, sounds like you. Alright, have fun sleeping, Shika. Said Sakura. Shikamaru rolled up the scroll, ending up tucking it into the stuffed animal he'd always hidden things in as a kid. He knew his parents hadn't ever actually checked in it, but he fished a seal out of his kunai pouch and stuck it on there anyway. Simple alarm seal, Naruto had drawn it, of course, so it really wasn't that simple, but still. He did end up going to sleep, but was awake a few hours later, at dawn. He tried to go to sleep, but it was futile. He didn't sleep quite as much, couldn't really afford to. Darn, well, he was awake now, he could see if anyone on his old world side was awake, try and pass the hours before he would normally get up at this age, or rather, when his mom forced him up, or he could pretend he had a nightmare and just get up now. His stomach rumbled impatiently at him, and Shikamaru yawned in mild annoyance. Fine, nightmare it was. He should probably fabricate a normal nightmare for a 2-year-old. He knew Choji at this age, didn't he? He could settle for seeing Choji die. That should be a perfectly fine excuse for a 2-year-old Nara to actually get out of bed. Mind made up, Shikamaru got out of his bed, neatly arranging the blankets to hide his old uniform, getting dressed quickly, and padded out of the room, cursing the cold floors. Shikamaru? His mother asked, looking up as he entered the kitchen. Shikamaru yawned, rubbing his eye. Had a nightmare. Ah, see Mir, his mother cooed, crouching down to offer to pick him up. Shikamaru, even if he was 16 mentally, decided to keep up pretending to be a toddler, and accepted his mother's picking him up and placing him on her hip. Besides, this way, he didn't have to walk. Now, I know you don't like boiled eggs, his mother said, pulling out a plate from the cupboard. But I'm sure you'll survive. Shikamaru didn't deign to answer, instead yawning again and settling his head on her shoulder. He doubted he could hide from his father for very long. His father was more intelligent than he was, no matter how many people disagreed with him. Also, he was a toddler, he could only do so much. If he told his father, it would go one of two ways: he would get tossed into T&I and brutally tortured, or his father would believe him and he'd be fine. Hopefully the second one. If he provided enough explanation, probably the least he'd get was Inoichi in his head for a bit to confirm his story. If he played his cards right, he would be able to keep it just between him, his father, and Inoichi. Absently, he started eating the food his mother had placed in front of him after she set him down. His father wouldn't be up yet, but Inoichi might be. Although he couldn't just go straight to Inoichi. His father is more intelligent, more likely to believe him if he shows no signs of lying, if he has all his facts correct. Although Inoichi is softer, probably less likely to toss him to T&I, but he wouldn't trust Shikamaru in the way his father would. His father would listen, would trust. Inoichi, although he knows the intelligence of Nara, would be blindsided by the fact that Shikamaru is only a toddler. Physically, at least. Briefly, he wondered if his mental avatar was of his old body, or of this one. Perhaps having it be the older him, how old he is mentally, would make it easier for Inoichi to believe him. Although that is assuming that Inoichi bothers to do his mind-walking jutsu at all. He realized his mother was looking at him with some amusement, and remembered that his thinking position and expression mostly looked like he was falling asleep. He had forcefully shifted it with a touch of Inoichi's help, so he had a less tell for when he went into deep thought around Danzo, who got suspicious any time anyone even looked at him funny. Why don't we get you back to bed? His mother suggested softly. Shikamaru briefly and quickly considered letting his mother put him back to bed. And decided against it. His father would probably be up soon, his work as a Jounin commander not letting him sleep quite as much as he liked. No thank you, don't want the nightmares to reoccur. All right, dear, his mother said doubtfully. If you say so. Shikamaru moved his long empty plate aside, putting his head down on the table. He just had to wait for his father to wake up and finish eating breakfast. His father came down a few minutes later, interrupting Shikamaru's listing of the questions he would need to ask next time he could access the scroll. Shikamaru, why are you up? His father asked, clear confusion in his tired voice. Shikamaru raised his head to look at him. Nightmare. Can I talk to you later? Checking to see his mother wasn't looking, he quickly swapped to umbu hand signs. It's important. His father's eyes narrowed suspiciously, but before he could do anything, his mother set a plate in front of him, and it was interrupted. Shikaku quickly ate, then collected both his and Shikamaru's plates, practically glaring at his son the entire time. Shikamaru looked back calmly, making sure not to give the game away. You can, his father said finally, gesturing to Shikamaru to follow him. Shikamaru was glad he'd thought to get dressed, but left off his socks. I'll just get on my socks. His father nodded, and Shikamaru walked back to his room, only hurrying slightly. He pulled on a pair of socks, then found a storage scroll in his old uniform, sealed his old uniform away, along with the stuffed deer he'd placed the communication seal inside. He tucked the scroll into one of his back pockets, securing it with chakra before hurrying downstairs. Ready, he said, stopping behind his father. Yoshino sighed. Be back before dinner, and make sure to eat a healthy lunch. Shikaku nodded quickly, ushering Shikamaru out of the door. They walked for a while, ending up at the Yamanaka's house. Inoichi answered the door, looking rather confused. His father began signing, Shikamaru easily keeping up. I'm going to need you for something. Classified, and right now. Inoichi nodded, flashing the affirmative sign at him, before calling back into the house that he had to leave now. Petulant whines from what sounded like Ino had Shikamaru suppressing a snicker. He'd forgotten just how much of a daddy's girl she'd been at this age. They ended up in T&I, in Inoichi's office. I have to ask you to trust me, Shikamaru started. And not to interrupt me very much, or we'll be here all day. His father and Inoichi narrowed their eyes in sync, but nodded. Shikamaru took a deep breath, then began. I come from approximately 13 years in the future. Not this world's future, but another world's future. What was so bad you had to come back? Inoichi asked, glancing at Shikaku. Danzo, Shikamaru said darkly. Danzo Shimura? The council member? Shikaku asked this time, eyes narrowing at the venom Shikamaru's voice held. Do you know any other? Shikamaru asked bitterly. He took advantage of the aftermath of an invasion to kill our Hokage, then kill the other Kage at the following Kage summit. Shikamaru smiled a grim smile at the dark expressions of his father and Inoichi. He had allies, if he could prove it. The Kage's family members and students were swiftly executed when possible. We got as many as we could out, but multiple didn't make it in time. There is an organized resistance? Inoichi asked. Shikamaru nodded. Naruto led it, I was the chief tactician. Everyone helped where they could, gathering information and using people going outside of the village to get that information to everyone in hiding. We're using a bunch of underground caves a couple of the hiding Iwa shinobi helped us find and modify to our needs. They're extremely difficult to find, so everyone's about as safe as they can be. And no one stopped him after he killed the Hokage? Inoichi asked, frowning deeply. They couldn't really. He blamed it on a foreign assassin, and I was just a chunin then. I had no sway in anything. So I kept it to myself, and made everyone I told do the same. They couldn't do anything or they would be killed. Sakura and Kakashi, along with Konohamaru and the Hokage's guards, the ones trained by Minato, fled the next night. Konohamaru? Inoichi asked. The Hokage's grandson, I guess he isn't born yet, is he? Either way, they fled just in time. Danzo called for their deaths the next day. And we were unable to do anything? Shikaku asked, eyes narrowed. Shikamaru sighed. The Hyuga clan were on his side. Any other clan couldn't oppose Danzo without extreme risk from the Hyuga clan. And the other clans? The Aburame, the Uchiha? Inoichi asked. The Nara weren't happy, but Danzo mostly dismissed us as too lazy to do anything. The Yamanaka protested quietly, but were ultimately sent off with a severe warning. The Akimichi kept quiet, supporting the people who fled with food scrolls. The Aburame and Inazuka remained quiet, but are subtly rebelling where they can. And the Uchiha? Inoichi prodded. Dead. In about 5 years, they will be executed by one of their own, Itachi Uchiha, under orders of Danzo and the Hokage. They had been planning a coup, and apparently, there was no other way out of it. I don't believe that, Shikaku disagreed. There are almost always better options than manslaughter. Chapter 3. Shikamaru shrugged helplessly. Danzo seemed to disagree with that statement. Using the people he most wanted dead in the villages, he sent them on suicidal missions. Yutu and Choza were ordered to kill Deidara, an Akatsuki member. He blew himself and U3, plus the rest of those on the mission, sky high. Who led after our deaths? Inoichi asked. Your wives. They did a good job. Or, they are, Shikamaru replied, yawning. And your proof of all of this? Shikaku said finally. Shikamaru pulled out the storage scroll, unsealing the contents, and blushing slightly when they both raised an eyebrow at him for the stuffed deer. He quickly pulled the scroll out of the deer, pushing the deer back into the seal. This was my old uniform, and the scroll allows me to contact my original world and time. How does it work? Shikaku asked, surveying the scroll cautiously. By a seal. I'm no seal master, I don't understand it, Shikamaru admitted. Naruto designed it. Took after both parents, did he? Inoichi asked softly, amusement crossing his face briefly. I would say he did, Shikamaru agreed. Never did manage the Hiraishin, but one of our other friends is really close. Good, he doesn't need to be a clone of his father, even if he acts far more like his mother, Inoichi laughed, but quickly settled down. Can you contact someone now? Shikaku stopped poking at the scroll reluctantly, allowing his son to open it up to an empty spot on the scroll. Shikamaru pulled a pencil from a pocket on his old uniform before shoving it aside to get a better angle so his father and Inoichi could see, and he could still write. Sakura? Said Shikamaru. It's Karen, Sakura's sleeping. We've been sleeping in shifts so someone's always awake to answer. Said Karen. I have my father and Inoichi here, I told them of the situation. Said Shikamaru. Good plan, you're what, 4? Said Karen. 2 or 3. Said Shikamaru. 3, you are currently 3, Shikamaru, Shikaka drawled. Whatever. Either way, they'll have more political sway. Maybe they can stop the Uchiha incident. Said Karen was thinking that. Said Shikamaru. While Karen was writing her reply, Inoichi took the opportunity to look at Shikamaru. What do you expect us to do about the Uchiha massacre? For one, your clan heads. The Uchiha were planning a coup because they felt there was no other way to get attention or respect. Many people sort of blamed the Kyuubi attack on them, and they were resentful for that. They were ostracized. With both the Nara and Yamanaka clans reaching out to better integrate them into the village, with any luck, we'll stop it before a coup even becomes an idea. And the Akimichi will follow our lead, Shikaku agreed, narrowing his eyes as Karen finished up her writing. Oh, so Tenten's actually sleeping right now, but she had a mission over here, and came to deliver news. You know how the elder Inoshikacho was killed by Deidara? Well, apparently, Danzo thought it would be a good idea to straight-up attempt to destroy AIM. Most of the people did get out, so there's that to feel better about, but Kisame Hashigaki, the blue fish guy? Yeah, he died letting Itachi, Tobi, and Zetsu get the other civies and ninja out. Itachi and Tobi are residing at a newly found hideout near AIM, and I don't know what Zetsu's doing. Itachi? Shikaku asked, eyes narrowing. They're just letting him room with them? At this point, Shikamaru said tiredly. We're saving anyone we can get our hands on. And who knows, he may be useful in taking down Danzo once and for all. Can we get a subset of these scrolls over to him? Said Shikamaru. We will need every scrap of information about the massacre we can get. Said Shikamaru. We'll see, I'll discuss it with Tenten, and if Naruto comes out this way again, I'll discuss it with him. Or get Tenten to do it remotely. Give us a few weeks, and maybe we'll get back to you. Said Karen. Give it a few hours, and both Sakura and Tenten should be awake. Said Karen. All right. Said Shikamaru. Any other questions? Shikamaru asked his father and Inoichi. They looked at each other for a long moment, then shook their heads. I would like to check out your head at some point in the near future, Inoichi said. If we could schedule a time to do that, it would be appreciated. Shikamaru nodded. Dad, you know my schedule, or lack thereof, you can plan it. With that out of the way, Shikamaru laid his head down on his arms and fell asleep. He would take sleep when he got it, and it was apparently far enough past dawn he could take a nap. He woke up in his own bed, not caring in the slightest his father had dropped him off at home, as his dear stuffed animal had been set next to his pillow, a note taped to its forehead. Shikamaru. I placed the uniform back in the scroll, then placed both scrolls inside the deer. We will talk when I get back home. Shikaku. It didn't really bother Shikamaru that his father had signed with his name, he was used to it. Many shinobi, once they had reached the same rank as their parents, just sort of gave up on using anything but their names while on duty. Or ceased using mom and dad completely. Shikamaru supposed it was a sort of growing up thing. You left mom and dad behind, and became their equal. He glanced out of his bedroom window, noting that he'd been sleeping for a couple of hours. Sakura and Tenten might be awake, and he could ask a couple of questions that had been bothering him. He pulled out the scroll, finding a pencil. He quickly drew a little deer instead of bothering to ask if anyone was awake and or paying attention. He was quickly answered. Hello Shikamaru. Said Sakura. I assume you arrived safely then? Said Tenten. I did. Said Shikamaru. I would guess you have a couple of questions. Said Karen. Yes. For one, you said the seals on my arms bound my chakra to my soul and mind. Was there a reason for that? Said Shikamaru. The intention was to allow you to access your own chakra, as a sort of secondary system, lying fairly dormant underneath your kid body's chakra. Still build up your current body's chakra, but you have an extra store to draw from when things get dire. Said Karen. We're pretty sure we succeeded. Said Sakura. And I checked over the seals, and I'm pretty sure they'll do what Karen says they should do. Said Tenten. Is it any different from accessing chakra normally? Said Shikamaru. We can't tell you that. We don't know. Said Karen. But do try it and get back to us. Said Sakura. Shikamaru chuckled slightly. When I bother dredging up the desire to do it, I will. Troublesome. Said Shikamaru. They didn't reply for a while, and Shikamaru imagined them laughing, leaning against each other, laughing their heads off in a way they hadn't in at least a year. A little drawing of a laughing person agreed with that. All right, we'll leave you to it. Said Sakura. And we'll keep working on a seal to increase the number of people you can talk to. Said Tenten. Itachi and Toby first. Said Shikamaru. Yeah? Of course. Said Tenten. AK, it's getting late, I have to leave and actually complete my mission. Said Tenten. Talk to you again sometime. Said Shikamaru. What's your actual plan for the Hyuga incident? Said Sakura. A guard near Hinata's room that isn't a Hyuga. Preferably an Uchiha, if not, a Nara or Kurama. Someone who can stop the Kumonin, but not kill him. Said Shikamaru. Would any Uchiha be willing to do that? Stand guard outside the Hyuga princess's bedroom? Or worse, would the Hyuga accept that? Said Sakura. Don't most Hyuga have sticks up their butts? Said Karen. Yes. Hinata being an exception. Said Shikamaru. And don't most, if not all Uchiha have sticks up their butts too? Said Karen. As far as I know, yes. Itachi may know one or two that don't. That are hopefully able to look past their long rivalry with the Hyuga to prevent a freaking disaster. Troublesome. Said Shikamaru. I was about to suggest asking Sasuke. Then I remembered he's dead. Said Sakura. And you felt the need to write that? Why? Said Shikamaru. No reason, I suppose. Said Sakura. Well, I'm going to eat something, then sleep. Said Karen. Do try out using chakra while I'm asleep, Shikamaru. Said Karen. No promises. Said Shikamaru. Shikamaru rolled up the scroll, tucking it into his back pocket, and leaving his room. Perhaps they were right, he should try using both this body's chakra and his original chakra. By chakra exercises, of course. He didn't feel like using a jutsu right now. He'd have to talk to his father about the guard later, when he got back from work. Perhaps his father could manage to convince Hiruzen to do it by saying something about Kumo wanting the Byakugan, and Hinata is a young unsealed girl. She would make the most sense, should Kumo betray them. If not, better safe than sorry. Yes, that should work. He ended up in a clearing in the Nara forest. He was pretty sure it was the clearing he had buried Haiden in his other world. He set the scroll down, placing his foot on a tree. He reached inward, finding first this body's chakra, small, weak, hardly used, then reaching deeper, he found his own, far larger and more controlled. He tapped into the second one. There would be time for increasing this body's chakra reserves later. Chapter 4. He walked up the tree easily, so he returned to the ground to fetch the scroll, then returned to lay down on one of the branches. The deer would fetch him if his mother wanted him, otherwise, no one would disturb him here. It was the Nara clan forest, no one but the Nara came here without permission. My chakra is fine, my old chakra, that is. Said Shikamaru. Oh, goody. Said Sakura. Tree walking? Said Sakura. Yeah, I can build up this body's chakra reserves later, but my own reserves are fine, and fully recovered. Said Shikamaru. From what Tenten said, that seems like something of a precious commodity, full chakra reserves. Said Sakura. Yes, unfortunately. Said Shikamaru. Sounds annoying. I've just been pushing chakra into my strength of 100 seal. It's almost ready. Said Sakura. That's good. If you do end up going out with a chance of death, write down the seal and its workings. We don't want that technique to disappear. Said Shikamaru. Yeah, already writing it down. Slow going though. Said Sakura. And I'm teaching it to Karen. She's improving it, I think. So, it's a seal, right? I think she's using cursed sealing techniques to adapt hers to fit herself. It looks a bit weird, but I think she's almost done and ready to draw it on herself. Said Sakura. That's good, you guys will need everything you can get. Said Shikamaru. Yeah. We're even working willingly with the remnants of Akatsuki. Said Sakura. So you have said? Said Shikamaru. There was a long pause, and Shikamaru assumed she'd gotten distracted. He used the opportunity to climb up a bit higher in the tree, hiding himself more fully in the foliage. Sorry, Zetsu just sorta poked out of the wall. It was weird. Said Sakura. What did he want? Said Shikamaru. I think he was just checking in, he mentioned something about doing rounds. I asked him to tell Tobi and Itachi about your situation, along with everyone else, of course, and to see if there was a way to talk to them. Said Sakura. Good. I wanted to ask Itachi about good Uchiha that would probably accept a guard position outside of the Hyuga compound for a night. Said Shikamaru. Oh. One moment Shikamaru, sorry. Said Sakura. Shikamaru waited patiently. He assumed Zetsu had reappeared, given the sudden interruption. That theory was quickly proven wrong. Sorry Shikamaru, apparently Tobi has some sort of teleportation jutsu. So, he and Itachi are here now. Said Sakura. Hello. Said Itachi. He had very pretty handwriting, Shikamaru would give him that. Not too loopy, but almost delicate. Hello. May I ask a question regarding the Uchiha? Said Shikamaru. You may. Said Itachi. I plan to have my father request an Uchiha guard hidden where the Kumo ambassador eventually will go with his captive Hinata. Hopefully, the Uchiha will be able to stop him, but not kill him. Said Shikamaru. Do you know of any Uchiha that would be open to doing that? Said Shikamaru. A couple. Mostly cousins. My elder cousin Shursui may work, as of right now. I believe he is a genin, but is known as Shunshin no Shursui. Said Itachi. I remember him from a bingo book. Said Shikamaru. He'd gotten his hands on a bingo book when he was about 5 years old. Another village's bingo book, Kiri, to be specific. His father had accidentally left it lying around. He'd flipped through it. Either way, he is fully capable at that age, and he's more approachable than most of my relatives. He is most likely to accept the position. Said Itachi. I'll tell my father. Thank you, Itachi. Said Shikamaru. No problem. Said Itachi. All questions answered for now? Said Sakura. Yeah. Tell Toby thank you for me. Said Shikamaru. I will. Said Sakura. Have to go, the deer want me for something. Said Shikamaru. Talk to you later. Said Sakura. Shikamaru closed the scroll, tucking it back into his pocket and walking back down the tree. Does my mother want me? He asked the deer quietly. A stag, sharp antlers gleaming in the dim light, nodded to him, and Shikamaru bowed slightly back. The stag was the head of the herd, old and wise. At almost 10 years old, he was the oldest in the herd and the most powerful. Shikamaru turned and hurried out of the forest, finding his mother quickly. There you are, Shikamaru. Come on, we need to get stuff for dinner. Your father's going to be home before dinner, so we're making his favorite dish. Shikamaru dragged his feet a little, but followed his mother to the market, allowed her to push a couple of bags of groceries on him, and then followed her back home. He ended up napping at the table while his mother cooked. His father came home right before his mother finished cooking. He flashed umbu hand signs at Shikamaru. Tomorrow, I'll take you to work with me. He'll do it then. Shikamaru nodded, then turned his head to go back to sleep. Get up and set the table, both of you. His mother shouted from the kitchen. The two male Nara groaned in unison and muttered, troublesome, before getting up to set the table. One did not disobey Yoshino Nara. Shikamaru checked the scroll as he was settling into bed. Sakura fell asleep. I'm awake now. Said Karen. Shikamaru hummed. They had a weird sleeping schedule. I'll be sleeping now as well. Said Shikamaru. All right, have a good night. Sleep tight and avoid nightmares. Said Karen. Night. Said Shikamaru. He rolled up the scroll, storing it back in the deer. He fell asleep quickly, debating whether to change his ceiling early or not. He was awake at dawn again. This time, however, he did have an excuse. He woke up to his father opening the door. Shikamaru yawned in greeting. Shikaku yawned back. I'll be down in a moment, Shikamaru said after a moment. Shikaku nodded and left, closing the door behind him. Shikamaru started cursing the cold floor silently again, remembering why, in his universe, he put carpet in his room. He got dressed quickly, checking the scroll and noting the cherry blossom drawing underneath his last message. So Sakura was awake now, good to know. He rolled the scroll back up, tucking it into the storage scroll, and then tucking that into the back of his pants, pulling his shirt over it so it was hidden. He padded down to where his father greeted him with a bowl of miso soup for breakfast and a spoon. Your mother is sleeping, eat quickly, and we'll go meet Inoichi. Shikamaru nodded, sitting down at the table and quickly eating the thin soup. He finished it quickly, placing the bowl in the sink and following his father out of the compound. Inoichi was waiting for them in his office in TNI, Shikaku, Shikamaru. He greeted. He gestured to the two chairs in front of his desk. It had been cleared of paperwork. Said paper was sitting in the corner, and looked like it was on time out. Good morning, Inoichi, Shikaku said, yawning. Shikamaru nodded, sitting on the stack of cushions on the chair directly in front of Inoichi. I'm assuming you know what I'll be doing? Inoichi asked Shikamaru. Shikamaru inclined his head. Ino practiced it on me many times. Inoichi inclined his head, hands forming seals. Shikamaru leaned back, getting into a comfortable position. Shikaku moved lazily so he would catch Inoichi's head when he passed out. Inoichi finished the symbol chain, and slumped forward, Shikamaru's eyes closing on their own. He opened his eyes to find his mindscape, appearing much like a Konoha file room. Mostly well lit, with the exception of a dark shadowy corner. It's very organized, Inoichi noted. Shikamaru nodded, glancing down at himself for a moment, before looking back at Inoichi. Inoichi glanced at him, and frowned. You're just 16. And he was. Shikamaru barely looked 16, but had a jounin vest on, along with a bright orange band with a Konoha symbol on it wrapped around his upper arm. You're a jounin. And what's with the orange band? Shikamaru nodded. Made jounin just after your deaths. The orange band was a marker for those who knew of and were helping the resistance. Orange was Naruto's favorite color. What do you want to see? What you know about Tsunade's death. If you don't mind. Shikamaru blinked slowly, then glanced towards a darker area of the room. Over here. They moved through the cabinets, the surrounding area getting darker. Inoichi frowned worriedly. Usually, this was only seen in Umbu agents, not teenagers. Even jounin level ones. The dark area of a mindscape usually signaled some sort of memory the person wanted to forget, but couldn't. Hence why it was usually seen with Umbu agents. Shikamaru hadn't said much about the missions he personally had been on, mostly giving them the basics of what happened between this time and the time his world was at. Inoichi supposed the missions had been bloodier than he had originally thought. Here we are, Shikamaru said, stopping at a cabinet wreathed in darkness. He rooted through one of the drawers for a bit, coming up with a single file. He motioned for Inoichi to step back, which he did, and tossed the file through the air. The file stopped in the air, opening up into a screen. Shikamaru stops on a rooftop directly across from Tsunade's hospital room. He glances over to look in. Inoichi was surprised. Tsunade looked so small in the hospital bed, old and wrinkled, no chakra left to keep up the near-constant genjutsu she usually had on. It was kinda sad. A shadow detaches from the wall inside the hospital room, and Shikamaru frowns, stepping across the roof. The shadow abruptly slits Tsunade's throat, and Shikamaru lunges across the rooftop, crashing through the window, landing right on top of the shadow, revealing a blank mask. Inoichi glanced to Shikamaru for an explanation. Root. Danzo's personal Umbu guard. Inoichi frowned deeply. How long has that been going on? Shikamaru shrugged. A long time. Unsure if it began during Lord Fourth or Sarutobi's reign. Inoichi raised his eyebrow. Not showing any respect for our Hokage? With all due respect, Inoichi, Shikamaru said, shaking his head, he lost any respect when he let Danzo continue unchecked. The rot had spread far enough Danzo was able to take over all 4 other major countries with little difficulty. Inoichi frowned, but gestured for the memory to continue. Shikamaru abruptly snaps the man's neck, leaping off him to check on Tsunade. The wound was too deep, and with so little chakra she couldn't heal it herself. It was too late, she was dead. Shikamaru's eyes burn with tears, and he leaps out of the window again, racing off to tell the others. They wouldn't follow Danzo if he could help it. Even Naruto couldn't ignore something like killing Tsunade. Not even for all the love in the world. Also, it wouldn't be good to be found at the scene of Tsunade's death. Chapter 5. Inoichi could see why it was in the dark section of Shikamaru's mind. Thank you. If you wouldn't mind one more. Shikamaru heaved a sigh, but nodded. When you found out about the Kyuubi. Shikamaru blinked, and headed for another section, this one brighter, the cabinets in a rainbow of pastel shades. Probably his childhood memories. Or perhaps the time before his first kill. Shikamaru took a folder, tossing it in front of Inoichi to view the memory. Shikamaru sneaks into his father's study, after a long day of watching Naruto from the shadows. He finds what he needs on his father's shelves, a book on Konoha's history. He opens it, flicking through pages to land on a page depicting Mito Uzumaki, the fearsome Kyuubi behind her. Mito Uzumaki, wife to the first Hokage, first Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, Shikamaru read out loud quietly to himself. I already knew the word Jinchuriki, had figured it out the week prior. I learned it because I had seen the word in the Kiri bingo book I borrowed and memorized, Shikamaru explained. Kyubi was checked off as just another version of the Rokubi in the book. 9 tails then 6 tails. Inoichi nodded to show his understanding, and the memory continued. Shikamaru reads farther in the book, flipping ahead to find right before the 4th Hokage's reign. A young girl was sent from the allied nation of Uzushio to take over the burden Mito had held most of her life. Shikamaru pauses reading, hopping up to pick another book off the shelf. He plops down on the floor, opening the book to show a page with a list of Uzumaki in Konoha. Mito Uzumaki was top of the list in bright red, Kushina Uzumaki the only other name in that color of ink. I knew this Kushina Uzumaki had to be the girl that took over the Kyubi, because she was the only other name written in red ink. She was also the only referenced Uzumaki. Inoichi was appalled. They really should have hid the fact Kushina had been a Jinchuriki better if a 5-year-old could figure it out. A 5-year-old genius Nara, but still a 5-year-old. Since Naruto has been called Demon Child many times during the period I was watching him, and Kushina was clearly not alive, Naruto had to be the Kyubi Jinchuriki. The folder folded itself back up, its job done. And I couldn't find any other living Uzumaki in Konoha, not that went by that name anyway. So Naruto it had to be. I did exactly what you would think I would do, and ignored it until Naruto deigned to actually inform us of it. Shikamaru took the folder, tucking it back into its place. Would that be all? Inoichi nodded. Thank you, Shikamaru. Shikamaru automatically slouched. It's no problem. Shall we go back out to my dad? Inoichi nodded and dissolved the jutsu. Shikamaru sat up in his chair, staring at his tiny hands in dismay. He had so much growing to do. Troublesome. Well, I don't have much to do the rest of the day, Shikaku yawned as they left Inoichi to his work. You always have things to do, Shikamaru deadpanned. Nothing I can't pawn off on hapless Chunin, Shikaku revised tiredly. Shoji match? Shikamaru hummed non-committally. All the same, they ended up at the shoji board that was permanently set up on the back porch. Are you able to tell me any more about your timeline? Shikaku suggested after a few moves back and forth. Shikamaru moved a piece slightly absently, thinking over his response. On one hand, it probably wouldn't hurt to tell his dad, and they were on Nara grounds, there were no root here. The deer would eat them if they ever tried. On the other hand, did he really want his father knowing it all? He had kept the once-over with Inoichi very vague for a good reason. A few moves later, and Shikamaru was ready. I suppose I could. Shikaku nodded, happy to wait for him. He moved another piece, and Shikamaru internally smirked. His father was falling into the trap he had set. Kakashi and Sakura were some of the first to leave, Shikamaru began. They left before Danzo was even back from the Kage slaughter. I presume Danzo was not pleased? He couldn't do anything about it, Shikamaru agreed. They were gone, their headbands slashed and on his desk. He could only hunt them down as missing ninja then, but they disappeared. Where? Anoki's granddaughter Kuratsuchi escaped as well. She located underground hideouts. Ganma, Naruto, Tenten, and Kakashi worked together to create seals that acted as gateways to these hideouts. Later versions of the seal ensured it couldn't be seen by Hyuga eyes, a necessary thing when the Hyuga were allied with Danzo. Shikaku frowned thoughtfully, moving a piece. Who else was on whose side? The Yamanaka were firmly allied with us, although couldn't exactly speak up much. Aburame were disregarded, although thoroughly disliked Danzo. Inazuka were rather loud, but again, couldn't do anything. Akimichi? Quietly supporting us, Shikamaru supplied. They made food scrolls for the people in hiding. They were quite appreciative of it. And the Nara? Shikamaru narrowed his eyes slightly as he caught the trap his father had set up, circumnavigating it with a move. We weren't pleased, especially not after you and Inoichi and Chusa died, but what could we do? So we plotted. We are fearing he may try and pull an Uchiha massacre on us, but we have the forest. The deer will eat anyone who tries, Shikaku agreed, avoiding Shikamaru's own trap. And Naruto has been making seals to reinforce the forest, Shikamaru yawned, catching a glimpse of the carnivorous deer they kept in their forests. Should he try anything, we're prepared. Nothing will happen. Good. Shikaku noted simply. Checkmate. Shikamaru moved one piece. Checkmate. A tie, his father said, mildly impressed. I've tied against you many times, Shikamaru noted quietly. Haven't won yet, but will one day. I have no doubt about that, Shikaku agreed, ruffling his son's hair. Perhaps we should join your mother inside. Shikamaru nodded tiredly, fixing his ponytail before following his father inside. Chapter 6. With over a week in this time, no new bad developments in his old one, and his father and Inoichi at his back, Shikamaru was feeling quite a bit better about his chances of stopping Danzo. Itachi had confirmed that his cousin was fully capable of keeping a secret, and if it would really help, Shikamaru would do well to tell him. Currently, he was trying to track down one Shisui Uchiha. His father had confirmed that the teen was in the village, but now Shikamaru just had to figure out where. The teen was currently a Chunin, and as such wasn't going out on any long missions, but plenty advanced enough to accept the mission Shikamaru wanted him for. Protecting Hinata Hyuga while the Kumo delegation was in town. Heard you were looking for me. Shikamaru turned around to find Shisui Uchiha, grinning and waving. Why's a little squirt from the Nara clan looking for me? Shikamaru blinked. He had not expected a cheerfully smiling Uchiha. Especially since he knew Itachi was friends with him. Also, Uchiha. Uchiha were not usually happy and smiling. I wish to talk to you about something. Well, here I am, Shisui replied. Shikamaru waited a moment, and when Shisui made no sign of moving, he sighed. In private, preferably. Uhu, Shisui said, nodding. Right. Come on, Shikamaru sighed, heading right for his house. It'd be better to do it in the Nara clan forest, where he knew Danzo wouldn't have his fingers. In their trek through the forest, Shisui ran into no less than 5 trees, tripped over 2 roots, and almost crashed into one of the predatory deer, that then scared him when it flashed sharp teeth at him. Shikamaru wondered why on earth Itachi thought his cousin was a good idea. The guy was apparently not very smart, and rather clumsy. But if Itachi thought it was a good idea, who was Shikamaru to contest it? He didn't know the guy personally. So what's the kid of the Jonin commander want with me? Shisui wondered as they went deeper into the forest. And what's so important that we're in the middle of the Nara clan forests? Shikamaru was very done with him, and just threw the scroll at his face. Shisui caught it with no problem, tripped over a root, nearly slammed into a tree, and somehow managed not to die or knock himself out. Shikamaru paused to let the Uchiha read the scroll. 2 minutes later, Shisui spoke up. So you think I can prevent some sort of mess with Kumo? Maybe you'll trip over him and knock him out, Shikamaru said sarcastically. Shisui looked like he was going to protest, then thought better of it. Right, and I can believe this how. Shikamaru took the scroll from him, pulling out a pen and starting to write. Sakura, are you still awake? Said Shikamaru. Yeah, why? Thought you were talking to Shisui. Said Sakura. I am, he wants proof, of course. And he isn't exactly a Yamanaka. Said Shikamaru. No, he's an Uchiha, said Sakura, even if Itachi says that was occasionally debated among the cousins. Said Sakura. Should I assume this Sakura isn't an Uchiha? Shisui asked, reading over his shoulder. Ask yourself, Shikamaru said, handing him the pen. Shisui took it, shrugged, and joined the conversation. Should I be assuming you aren't an Uchiha? Said Shisui. Oh, hey Shisui. No, I'm not an Uchiha. I'm a Haruno. Maybe don't go find baby me though, said Sakura. Shisui glanced quizzically at Shikamaru. She was a fangirl up until like age 13 when Tsunade beat it out of her and Sasuke left the village. Shikamaru shrugged, taking the pencil back. Shursue's handwriting was not great, although Shikamaru was fairly sure that it was at least somewhat trained. Is Itachi able to be contacted? Said Shikamaru. Maybe? Said Sakura. A little drawn person shrugging appeared a moment later, and Shikamaru snorted at it. I'll see if I can figure out where their cave is connected in the network. Tenten just finished it a few hours ago. She's almost done with her Ration, got the rudimentary version down, and is working on her own seal. Should be done in only a day or two. Said Sakura. You have someone learning her Ration? Shursui asked, looking quite excited. Yeah, Tenten, she's a seal master. She's mostly stuck working off of Ganma's notes from what he remembered, and her own knowledge. She can't get her hands on either Minato's or Tobarama's notes, as they're locked in the vaults. It's been slow, but it seems she's finally got it. Whoa, Shursui muttered. Ah, here we go. Got to Itachi and Tobi's lair. Said Sakura. Sakura informed me you had Shursui on? Said Itachi. Hey cousin. Said Shursui. You're going to have to give him a moment. Said Sakura. He hasn't exactly seen you in like 8 years. Said Sakura. Shursui looked rather distressed. I think I'll try not to leave my Itachi. We're trying to avoid that happening, yes. Shikamaru agreed. You are 11, correct? Said Itachi. Yeah, why? Said Shursui. Merely wished for confirmation. Said Itachi. Stay away from Danzo if you can. Said Itachi. The village elder? Said Shursui. The village elder? Said Itachi. All right? Said Shursui. Trust him, Shikamaru said, glaring at it as if it had offended him. Danzo is a corrupt man and should have never been allowed to rise in power. Okay? Shursui said, looking quite confused. Besides that, I trust you understand? My father will assign you the actual mission in a few days, once we convince the Hyuga. Good luck with that, Shursui snorted. Shikamaru noticed movement from the corner of his eye, and glanced at the scroll. Dark frantic writing was appearing on the scroll. Shoot, shoot, shoot. Tenten's gonna take you guys now, Danzo's trying to get the Nara clan. Said Sakura. Shursui noticed his distraction and looked at the scroll as well. What? Shikamaru quickly started writing. What's going on? Is everyone evacuating? Said Shikamaru. Yeah, we're getting everyone out before the entire compound goes up in flames. I have to be there to set up the protection seals. Naruto's out on a mission right now I think, so I'm doing it. I have the seals. Said Tenten. What the heck is going on? Shursui asked, staring at it in confusion. Danzo's trying to kill my clan in that universe, Shikamaru said, rather stressed. Luckily we have the forest, and with Tenten and Naruto sealing it up, plus the carnivorous deer, they should be just fine. Theoretically. Seal masters are not to be trifled with, Shursui said solemnly. I grew up with 2 of them, I know that, Shikamaru muttered. Is everyone safe? Said Shikamaru. Yeah, I think we have everyone. Oh, shoot, that Hyuga almost saw me. I have to return this to Sakura. Maybe I'll see you guys in a few days when I finish her Ration. Said Tenten. See you then. Said Shikamaru. She seems cool. Shursui decided, grinning. Shikamaru debated telling him that Tenten certainly wouldn't be able to meet him, let alone decide to go on a date with him. Shikamaru decided not to. Sue him. He was feeling petty. We should leave, you probably have things to do, and I have a nap to take. All right, Shursui agreed easily. Chapter 7. Shursui couldn't say he was exactly enthusiastic to spend the 4 nights that the Kumonin were in Konoha waiting in the treetops near Hinata's bedroom and well within the Hyuga clan limits, but he had to admit he was honored that Shikaku had picked him. He was barely a chonin, and only 11 years old. Maybe he could ask about a jounin promotion after this. If you're gonna think that loudly, find another tree, Shikamaru, his apparent new friend, groaned. Seriously, what was with Shursui and finding tiny traumatized geniuses? ignoring the fact that technically he was one himself. I'm not thinking loudly, Shui decided to protest. Yes you are, Shikamaru complained, placing an arm over his eyes. Shut up and let me sleep. Shui grunted in true Uchiha fashion, and went back to thinking. Sue him, he wasn't a Nara and was not capable of falling asleep in trees at a moment's notice. Perhaps it would be good for him to pick up the Jounin promotion. His parents weren't exactly in the best of health, and it would help him provide for them. It would mean longer missions, but it did also mean fewer graveyard shifts and fewer paperwork shifts. Both of which were boring as heck. He hated them, but who didn't? On another hand, it may put him in Danzo's crosshairs. He'd already been in them, but he was more of a background target for reasons he didn't know but was thankful for. Itachi, unfortunately, was a top target, being traumatized early by his father, and already a genin, even at his young age. Shikamaru didn't appear to even be on Danzo's radar, well, any more than any other Nara was, and Shui had no doubt that it was the work of Shikaku and Inoichi. They held a lot of sway in the village, due to being the Jonin commander and head of T and I respectively. Although to be fair, if the kid hadn't shown him that scroll, Shui never would have guessed he was a time traveler. All Nara acted basically the same, I'm smarter than you but too lazy to tell you so. Made it hard to tell if something was wrong with one of them. They acted basically the same at all times, whether sick, injured, or in high levels of emotional distress. Which, honestly, Shui wasn't quite sure if they were capable of yet. It didn't really seem like it. You should probably relocate, Shikamaru noted tiredly. The Hyuga will call on you soon. And I'd rather not have my nap interrupted when that happens. Fine, if you hate my presence so much, Shui said, somewhat dramatically, as the situation called for, I'll leave. As he had clearly been dismissed, Shui hopped down from the tree and exited the Nara clan forests, thankfully without any roots springing up to trip him, or any carnivorous deer to give him a heart attack. They had been near the edge of the forest after all. Unfortunately, on his way to the Hyuga compound, 2 walls, a root, and a tree branch all conspired to injure him, but he evaded them, albeit with some difficulty. The Hyuga that met him at the walls looked displeased, but when didn't the Hyuga? They were like Fugaku, always annoyed. Don't let either the Hyuga or Fugaku hear him say that. Or tell them he said that. It would only spell disaster for him. He would be doomed, and without a trial too. How terrible. Besides that, he was led to the sanctioned tree, and left to climb up it. Itachi said he was like a squirrel with how he climbed trees using all 4 limbs, but Shui will have you know that he taught himself how to tree walk, and just happened to learn it that way, so now it's how he does things. Shikamaru had muttered something about him being troublesome when he saw Shui do it, so who knew what the Nara was thinking? Not Shui that was for sure. The tree had a nice fork he could settle into, which he did gladly. It was certainly easier and more comfortable than the prickly branch he was stuck with in the Nara clan forest. He had no clue how the kid managed to sleep on those branches. With practice from many long graveyard shifts, Shui only caught 30-minute naps consisting of light dozing for the next 2 days, finally getting some actual action in the 3rd night. A ninja with a headband, which was the important part, if they had a headband it could be traced to the village. Shui quietly snuck along above the shinobi, cheerfully using the fact that few people think to look up. Boo! Shui whispered, knowing the shinobi would hear him, before dropping down to pin the shinobi to the floor. A brief wrestling match that Shui won through sheer ability honed from years of wrestling with older cousins and the occasional younger cousin, and pinned him to the ground before tying him up in ninja wire. Congratulations! Shui chirped. You're gonna be charged with an attempted kidnapping of the Hyuga heir. Well, that was easier than expected, really he'd thought the guy would put up more of a fight. At least Esikaku seemed impressed, so maybe he would ask about a Jounin promotion. Chapter 8. Father, Shikamaru said, hanging over the side of a chair. I'm bored. Forgive him if he was a bit restless, once active like he'd been forced to be under Danzo's reign, it was hard to slow back down. even if it had been a week. Is there any word from Kumo? Shikaku glanced at him with half-lidded eyes. Are you sure you're my son? Shikamaru just stared at him for a while. Kumo? He asked again. Shikaku huffed quietly. Fine. Kumo's annoyed, but can't refute our claims. They're demanding their messenger back. We'll send him over tomorrow. Shikamaru nodded once, satisfied with that outcome. It really was one of the better ones. I'm suggesting Shursui try for Jounin, Shikaku added, and Shikamaru blinked at him. He's 11, Shikamaru pointed out. 12 and 2 months, Shikaku allowed. He has the skill for it, clearly. And if you're so bored, go talk to your scroll friends. I'm interested to know if your friend finished her ration. Probably has, Shikamaru muttered, but moved off anyway, heading for his room where the scroll was currently. He opened it to find a record of who was awake when, and that Karen was currently awake, although Sakura hadn't gone to sleep yet. Hey, said Shikamaru. He had to wait a moment before Sakura responded. Oh. Hey Shika, said Sakura. Sorry, I was a bit distracted, said Sakura. It's fine, said Shikamaru. Is Tenten done with her ration? Said Shikamaru. Last we heard from her, yes. Said Sakura. Unfortunately it's been 2 days since then, said Karen. Shikamaru frowned. That certainly was concerning. 2 days without contact from someone who could teleport? Either she was very busy, or dead. Somehow he feared the latter was correct, rather than the former. Can you tell me if she does reappear? Said Shikamaru. Yeah, of course. Said Sakura. You don't usually voluntarily talk, are you bored or something? Said Karen. Maybe. Said Shikamaru. There was a long pause, and Shikamaru suspected they were laughing at him. How rude. Right, maybe you can find something to do? Said Sakura. Maybe the Akimichi will let you help them or something. Aren't they always up for help cooking? Said Sakura. And then you'll get to see Choji. Said Karen. They did have a point. Fine. I'll go see Choji. Since you guys are so insistent upon me leaving and not talking to you, said Shikamaru. No, we're sorry, don't leave. Said Sakura. Are you bored? Said Shikamaru. Shikamaru smirked at the parallel to their asking him the same question earlier. The following answer was the same. Maybe. Said Sakura. In our defense, there is very little to do in here, and we're basically done with our strength of 100 seals. Said Karen. Make new medical seals or something. You're both medicnine, go nuts. Said Shikamaru. It's like you want us to stop talking to you. Said Sakura. I do have something else to do. Said Shikamaru. Rude? Said Karen. I'll just leave then. See you around. Tell me if Tenten drops by. Said Shikamaru. Deal? Said Sakura. Shikamaru closed the scroll, settling it back into its hiding place. He would drop by to see Choji. It was a good idea. And he wanted to see his friend. Even if said friend was 3 years old for real, not the fake 3-year-old Shikamaru was. It'd still be good to see him. I'm going to go over to Choji's, Shikamaru said, lazily waving a hand in the vague direction of his father. Don't die on the way, Shikaku replied, yawning. Excuse him, Shikamaru was a highly capable jounin. He wouldn't die going 3 blocks to reach the Akimichi compound. Oh well, troublesome fathers were always bound to be troublesome and worry. It was how fathers worked. Shikamaru. Choji said cheerfully, hugging him. What are you doing all the way out here? Chusa asked, ushering him inside. Oh well, no matter, as long as Shikaku knows you're here, you're good. Come, help us cook, we're preparing to send the delegation we're sending to Kumo with their messenger. They'll need food for the journey. Those picked to escort the messenger were probably jounin, and thus capable of cooking their own meals, but Shikamaru ignored that. It was sweet the Akimichi would do this anyway. They were the ones to prepare all of the food for those stuck underground. Until Naruto finished the seal with the summoning realm, everyone was stuck relying on the Akimichi to feed everyone. Luckily, the congenial clan didn't mind, even loving the challenge of making enough food. Mama's letting me help with the pies, Choji told him enthusiastically. Shikamaru yawned. Is that so? Can I help too? Perhaps a bit out of character for him, but oh well. When you live with constant missions, one after another, you get used to a certain pace of life, and it's hard to slow down. 4 hours later, and Shikamaru barely remembered to check the scroll before getting ready to crash for the night. He was tired. Good news. Tenten's alive. She was just visiting all of the other hideouts and placing Haration seals in all of them. Said Karen the message had probably been from a while ago, since Karen had since fallen asleep. That's good to hear, is she all good? Said Shikamaru. Said Sakura yes, she's doing well, and I guess she'll be doing a lot of the food delivery from now on. With a Haration seal in every hideout, she'll travel between them and stuff. Said Sakura that's good. Said Shikamaru it really was. The method they had been using previously, everyone carrying food scrolls on them and dropping them near hideouts, wasn't the greatest. With Tenten there, it would be stabilized, and the Akimichi would probably be able to make a few different foods, with her there to deliver them hot. Assuming they had a seal that allowed them to draw Tenten back. Seriously, it's been amazing. She brought us the first hot meal we've had in months. It was amazing. Said Sakura that's really good. I'm glad you guys could work that out. Said Shikamaru us too, honestly. Hadn't realized just how much I missed hot meals. Seriously Shikamaru, that meal was heaven in food form. Said Sakura on a completely unrelated note, we've started in on adding more links to the connection, so other people can talk, without this being the only place people can say hi. Oh, Ino says hi. Tenten said to tell you. Said Sakura as amazing as that is, I really need to sleep, I'm exhausted. Said Shikamaru oh. Alright. Sleep then. Have a good night. Said Sakura. Shikamaru closed the scroll, hiding it away, and crashing on his bed face down. Now, it was time for some sleep. Chapter 9. Shikamaru. Said Sakura what? Said Shikamaru. Shikamaru was glad the scroll didn't have some sort of alarm function when someone wrote in it. He might have had to wake up. Sakura was lucky he was already awake. Shikamaru. Said Ino. I said what, troublesome woman? Said Shikamaru. Shikamaru groaned, suddenly getting why they were pestering him. The extra scrolls had been finished. Troublesome. Who has one? Said Shikamaru. Ino. Yes, Tenten now has the main copy, Shino, Niji, Kakashi and Itachi. Said Sakura. Tenten has the main copy? Said Shikamaru. I do. Said Tenten. They figured it'd be safer with me. I haven't settled on a hideout and am just bouncing between them. Said Tenten. Shikamaru had to agree it would likely be safer with someone who had Haration. Tenten had been fearsome before she got Haration, and this likely only ensured her place as a very high-ranking ninja indeed. Niji, how are Lee and Guy faring? Said Shikamaru. Last he'd heard of them, they'd been drafted into Umbu, although he hadn't seen them since, he was pretty sure they were still alive. They were stubborn like that. If I want to have them over for dinner I have to physically go get them because they don't ever remember. Said Niji. He's just salty because Lee forgot the epic Naruto beatdown Niji received the other day. He has since been reminded, although whether it stuck remains to be seen. Said Ino. How on earth did Lee forget that Chunin exams? Said Shikamaru. They've kind of been coping in their own unique way, with severe short-term memory loss. Said Ino. They aren't home a lot, so I moved in with them. Said Niji. I have to go hunt them down a lot unfortunately. Said Niji. It's been an adventure. Said Ino. Shikamaru. Bet. That sounded so very troublesome. At least they remember to take care of themselves. Said Niji. That sounds like a stab at my sensei. Said Sakura. A valid one. Said Ino. I resemble that comment. Said Kakashi. Don't you mean resent? Said Shikamaru. It wasn't like Kakashi to make a mistake, but he figured he should check. Just in case. Was this Kakashi's nice handwriting? As opposed to what he used on mission reports, which was an ineligible chicken scratch. I said what I said. Said Kakashi, so he hadn't made a mistake. Well, now they had confirmation that it had, in fact, been a stab at Kakashi, and a correct one at that. Well, now we know you can, in fact, write properly. Said Shikamaru. We've all seen your mission reports. Said Sakura. I reserve the right to remain silent. Said Kakashi. You aren't in Konoha, so that's null. Said Ino. Although it's basically null these days in Konoha anyway. Said Ino. You work in TNI. Said Shikamaru. Yeah, the right to remain silent isn't exactly in your vocabulary. Said Sakura. Oh shoot. I have to get back to work. Ignore me jotting down flowers in the sides, I'm excusing this as our orders scroll. Said Ino. Shikamaru jotted down his own goodbye, rolling up the scroll to stuff into the seal he'd inked on his forearm. Invisible unless he pushed chakra into it. He did have to actually get up at some point today. He had a rematch with his dad. He suspected it would be another quest for information on his father's part, but he couldn't fault him. He'd be curious too if his kid came from an alternative future. Morning, he greeted his mother. Good morning, Shikamaru, she returned, placing a plate on the table. Get up earlier next time, you might get more. Shikamaru blinked tiredly at the plate. It was food. He could make it up at lunch. Not like he was really doing anything. Except playing his father at shogi. He settled down across from his father after he'd finished eating. You're here. Shikamaru deigned to yawn in response. His father made the first move, and Shikamaru judged his options before moving as well. They played in silence for almost an hour before his dad spoke. Why did the Hyuga side with Danzo? Shikamaru shrugged, moving his piece. He promised to allow them their traditions if they sided with him. They sided with him and kept their abomination of a seal. That's all? Shikaku asked, raising an eyebrow and moving a piece. He also allowed them to seal the Hyuga members en route, Shikamaru admitted. He surveyed the board for a long while before moving a piece. They became his personal force within the village, and he trusts them above the other clans. With the exception of a few people including Hinata and Niji. The clan heiress? Shikaku said, raising his other eyebrow. The clan heiress and her cousin, Shikamaru agreed, yawning. Troublesome, Shikaku sighed, moving a piece, face assuming its usual bored expression. Chapter 10. Shikamaru stared at the scroll. He knew logically that even if he didn't open it things wouldn't change, but he really had to hear the news. Or see it. So he opened it up reluctantly. Finally. Said Tenten. Something happen? Said Sakura. Yeah, the freaking seal is done. Said Tenten. A little doodle of a person throwing their hands in the air was next to the message. It looked like Sakura had replied with a doodle of a person flipping a table. Oh, finally. Said Niji. Maybe we can't move the green duo in there, but it makes me feel better that there's less chance of you idiots being caught by my clan. Said Niji. On a side note, I am now officially designated as their handler. Yay. Said Niji. I can feel the sarcasm. Said Sakura. Wow. Amazing. Said Niji. Shikamaru snorted, eyeing the little person laughing drawn in next to it. Apparently, since I have calligraphy skills, I get the utmost important job of filling out anything they're supposed to, and making sure they remember everything. Said Niji. Oh, good for you. Said Tenten. You get to be a glorified secretary. Said Tenten. Says the one I know for a fact has not gotten more than 2 hours of sleep in the last 4 days. Said Niji. Tenten. Said Sakura. A drawing of a tiny angry person folding their arms made Shikamaru snort again. At least the person wasn't shaking a fist at Tenten. In my defense, we were really close to finishing that seal, and Naruto needed it done before he had to head out again. Said Tenten. But now we have it done. Said Sakura. And we can see people other than each other and you for the first time in months. Said Sakura, now caught up. Shikamaru grabbed a pencil. How long will it be before everyone's safe? Said Shikamaru. Oh hey Shikamaru. Said Sakura, we estimate 3 weeks. Said Tenten, but when does anything go according to plan? Said Tenten. Shikamaru sighed. She was right, of course. Nothing ever did. Have you seen the place? Said Shikamaru. Yes. Said Tenten, it's big, and really empty. It's partially a forest, the other half is a rocky plains area. Won't be the best for growing things, but it won't be the worst. Said Tenten, the Akimichi will have seeds ready for you by tomorrow. Said Ino, I just finished talking to them. Said Ino, thanks Ino. Said Tenten, I'm stretched thin trying to do a million things at once, overseeing the construction of the seals that will allow everyone to travel to the place, distributing food to everyone, and trying to avoid those dang Hyuga. No offense Niji. Said Tenten, none taken, I get the feeling. Guy and Lee aren't the only reason I moved out. Said Niji, dang Hyuga it is then. Said Shikamaru. Shikamaru closed the scroll just as his father came in. Mother wants us for breakfast? He asked. His father nodded tiredly. Who else? Shikamaru shrugged. Ino? Shikamaru sealed the scroll into his arm, and followed his dad out into the dining room. Took you too long enough, his mom scolded them both. Breakfast was starting to go cold. It probably wasn't, but semantics. Sorry Mom, Shikamaru repeated dutifully, sitting down in his spot. Sorry dear, his father agreed, kissing his wife. Shikamaru fake gagged, looking determinedly down at his plate. Just eat your food, his mom sighed, a thump telling Shikamaru she'd probably slapped his dad's back end. Which he wished he didn't know, but what could he do? How far along are you in the process? Said Shikamaru, the Nara are almost in, just a few more days. Said Tenten, I'm starting to wonder if we should make a second set of scrolls just for our world, so we don't clutter this one up with plans and stuff. Said Sakura, probably a good idea. Said Shikamaru, I'll get to work on it. Said Tenten, thanks Tenten. Said Sakura, no problem. Said Tenten, but you have been getting more sleep recently, right? Said Niji, no comment. Said Tenten, I'll knock her out for a while once she drops by here again. Said Sakura, thank you. Said Niji, since apparently, I am the only functional member of our team. Said Niji, and I'm the only one with common sense. Said Tenten, you're all idiots. Said Sakura. Shikamaru shook his head. Common sense wasn't something that existed in their world anymore. It hadn't for a long time. But Tenten did have a version of it. That and a version of sanity, which was impressive for a shinobi. Functional, however, was a completely different thing, and also a thing foreign to any seal master. Nara were better at being functional human beings than most, but they were not at all completely functional. No shinobi ever was. It came with the job. Chapter 11. Shikamaru had known his father was working on getting the village to have better relations with the Uchiha, although he hadn't known it would end up with this. He'd been walking to the outskirts of the village to attempt to find Shursui and check up on him, a request from his Itachi, something about making sure Danzo doesn't get near him. He walked past the entrance to the Uchiha compound, then backed up to look again. They were packing. He could see the shops packing up their wares, people bustling around carrying boxes or scrolls. He was apparently standing there long enough that Shursui found him instead of the other way around. Oh. Hey Shikamaru. Shursui chirped, landing in front of him, a slightly smaller Uchiha followed by what Shikamaru recognized as a tiny Sasuke, landing next to him. These are my cousins, Itachi and Sasuke. Sasuke's a little brat, but Itachi's nice. Most of the time. Reassuring, Shikamaru remarked dryly. What's going on? Shursui made an inquisitive hum, then glanced behind him. Oh. Yeah. We're packing up 'cause we're going to be moved back into the center of the village. I think this'll be a huge step in Uchiha and village relations. Shikamaru nodded absently. That's good, I'm glad you're moving back. It'll be better. Probably. Reassuring, Shursui parroted Shikamaru's earlier word in a joking manner. Very, Shikamaru said dryly. How old are you? Sasuke asked suspiciously after a long moment of staring at Shikamaru. Old, Shikamaru deadpanned sarcastically. He's your age, Shursui told Sasuke, ruffling the kid's hair. Sasuke batted his hand away and attempted to fix his hair. If putting it back in its duck butt style was fixing it. Itachi patted Sasuke's head once he was done. Perhaps you can be friends. Shikamaru honestly couldn't tell if he was being serious. Either Itachi was joking, or he really was just that socially awkward. Or had a false belief in Sasuke's ability to make friends. Both were about evenly likely. So, Shursui said, fairly loudly. I'm starving. Who wants food? Shikamaru stared at Shursui for a moment before shrugging and going along with it. Couldn't hurt. So you wouldn't believe what I saw today. Said Shikamaru. Oh, what is it? Said Ino the Uchiha, they're moving back to the center of the village. This is a huge step towards preventing the Uchiha massacre entirely. Said Shikamaru. That's wonderful. Said Itachi. I believe that will be a massive step towards integrating them with the village more. The next best step would be to get other shinobi into the Konoha police force. Said Itachi. Agreed. Udon was looking through old records from the first Hokage's reign, and he came across a thingy that noted that the Konoha police force was never intended to only be made up of Uchiha. Said Ino. Apparently, according to notes left behind by Tobirama Senju, the police force was supposed to be a balance to the Hokage and the Anbu. A way to keep them in check, if you will. Said Ino. Interesting, I will bring it up to my dad. Said Shikamaru. Ensure my father knows of it as well. Said Itachi. Tell Shursui, he should be able to bring it up to me, who will bring it up to my father. Said Itachi. All right, I'll remember that. Said Shikamaru. Is everyone safe there? Said Shikamaru. And did Tenten ever get knocked out? Said Shikamaru. Yes, and yes. I knocked her out as soon as she arrived. She's been sleeping off what I used for the last few hours. This being after the 12 hours of sleep what I used did. She woke up a few hours ago, we got some food into her, then it was off into dreamland again to finish sleeping off the drug. Said Sakura. Which one did you use? Said Ino. And that's my cue to leave while I still understand the conversation. Said Shikamaru. Shikamaru took that opportunity and closed the scroll, sealing it away again. He wandered out to find his father, who he knew was at home at the moment. It was one of the very rare lull days. Even now, his father was busy with paperwork that came with being the Jonin commander. Father? Shikamaru asked, poking his head into the office his father used. Yes, Shikamaru? Did something happen? Shikamaru shrugged, slipping inside and closing the door behind him. Not exactly, but something was found. Shikaku set his pen aside. Oh. And what might that be? Shikamaru sat in the chair in front of his father's desk. Someone from my original dimension was going through records from the first Hokage's time. They found some interesting things. Pertaining to the Uchiha, I assume? Shikaku said, folding his fingers on the desk. Who wrote them? Tobirama Senju. According to some notes he left on documents surrounding the Konoha police force, they were originally designed to be a counterweight or balance for the Hokage and Anbu. Shikamaru sighed, resting his head on his crossed arms. The intention was to keep them from being too powerful. Something to keep them in check. The Konoha police force was never intended to only be the Uchiha. And yet Danzo corrupted it, Shikaku sighed alongside him. I'm getting your mother to begin spreading rumors about him, although it's slow going. With any luck, he'll be removed from any sort of Hokage-affecting position soon. It'll be a bit slow, however. Try and allow other shinobi that aren't Uchiha into the Konoha police force next, Shikamaru advised. It's the next step we need to take. Of course, Shikaku agreed, nodding. Now shoo, I have paperwork to finish. Shikamaru yawned. Whatever, I have a nap calling my name anyway. Chapter 12. No, I am not going to slip poison into his drink. Said Shikamaru. Why not? Said Ino. It's a perfectly valid thing to do. Said Ino. Noah. Said Sakura. Ino. Yes. Said Ino. Noah. Said Shikamaru. As great as it would be to see that, I must agree. Said Hinata. Wonderful to see you again. Said Ino. I trust you are well? Said Shikamaru. Yes, I am well. Said Hinata. Just got back from a long mission, however. Said Hinata. Hey guys? Said Kiba. The sloppy handwriting was accompanied by an inked paw print. Looked like Akamaru was there as well. Which was reassuring. The paw print was massive. How big had Akamaru gotten? How big is Akamaru? Said Shikamaru. Eh? Almost as big as Kuramaru. Not quite, but close. Said Kiba. That's good, he's growing well. Said Kakashi. Ah, the resident cryptid. Said Sakura. Excuse you? Said Kakashi. Excuse you? Said Sakura. Oh, shush you too. Said Ino. I still maintain we should poison Danzo. I know a couple that would do the trick. Nice and slow and made to look like a disease. Said Ino. It won't work on our Danzo because he's kind of paranoid like that, but yours shouldn't be that paranoid. Said Ino. I am not poisoning Danzo. Said Shikamaru. Final warning. Said Shikamaru. A tiny pouting person was drawn. Shikamaru rolled his eyes at it, then scribbled in a note that he was rolling his eyes in parenthesis next to the person. A person sticking their tongue out was drawn, and Shikamaru rolled his eyes again. Is there any actual news? Said Shikamaru. Nope, things have been pretty quiet. Which is good. Said Sakura. All quiet on our end as well. Said Hinata. Good. Said Shikamaru. I leave you to your argument. Said Shikamaru. With that he rolled up his scroll and sealed it away. He was hungry and wanted food. So he went into the kitchen to find a snack. It was only halfway to dinner, so he wasn't about to wait. Especially not when the other option was pretty much just watching the others argue. He loved them, but they were very tiresome when they argued about everything and nothing. Shikamaru? His father asked, waking Shikamaru from his impromptu nap. There's news. Shikamaru blinked up at his father. What kind? Good, and related to the Uchiha, his father said, opening the door further. Let's not talk here. Shikamaru hummed in agreement, rolling off the bed and following his father into his study. What is it? He asked as soon as they were in there. We have managed to get the presence of other non-Uchiha shinobi in the Konoha police force approved, his father said, very slight excitement entering his tone. Which basically meant he was ecstatic. Fugaku has been participating more and more in conversations now that Anoichi and I have made an effort to include him. Chusa is following our example, as are several of the other clan heads. Shikamaru breathed a sigh of relief. That had likely completely circumnavigated the Uchiha massacre, or at least delayed it a very long time. Shikamaru wouldn't let what had happened in his time happen here. Not while he was alive. He just had to deal with Danzo. Now shoo, I have missions to assign, Shikaku said, making a shooing motion with his hand. Shikamaru huffed a barely audible troublesome, but left. He opened up the scroll again once in his room, scanning the conversation, which was a long lecture from Sakura, Ino, and Shino about what poisons were best for whatever things. Shikamaru actually memorized a good section of it. It was good information. Even if he wasn't going to poison Danzo. It may come in handy later. No one was writing at the moment, although Shikamaru didn't have a way to tell how long they'd been silent. Maybe they should add that. No, it wouldn't work cross dimensions. Oh well. Writing started showing up, and Shikamaru rummaged for a pencil to reply. Maybe. Hey, Hinata, or someone in Konoha, does Choji have any food scrolls ready? We could really use one, and Tenten can just teleport in and grab it. Said Karen. Oh, Choji's been meaning to get me to tell you, he has a lot of food scrolls saved up, 'cause they don't decay or anything, he has a bunch pre-prepared. I'll tell him to get some ready. Said Ino. Sounds about like him. Said Shikamaru. Oh, hi Shikamaru. Said Ino. He also says bring back all of the scrolls you guys collected, he needs to reuse them, Naruto's been too busy to make him enough new ones. Said Ino. Will collect them. Said Karen. Tell him to expect 10:10 in about half an hour. I'll write here when she's ready. Said Karen. All right. Said Ino. I get off in 20 minutes anyway. Said Ino, pretending to be writing down flowers you need again. Said Shikamaru. Oh, I'm doing that too. Said Ino. Just don't get caught. Said Karen. Duh. Said Ino. I won't. I promise. Said Ino. Now keep that promise. Said Karen. Of course. Said Ino. Shikamaru rolled his eyes at the two. Maybe they'd stop making metaphorical pining heart eyes at each other. Doubtful, but possible. Chapter 13. Shikamaru couldn't say he was glad to wake up, mostly because he never was, but he certainly wasn't annoyed about it. He started the academy today, he'd be able to check in on the tiny versions of all his classmates. He knew Choji and Ino were fine, he saw them a lot, just because of his father's closeness with the Akimichi and Yamanaka clan heads. As for the rest of his classmates and Guy's team, he didn't know. He'd seen Naruto around the village, of course. Sasuke was with his brother and cousins sometimes. He'd seen Tenten a few times, often walking with Lee or playing with weapons. You're ready. His mom sounded surprised, and Shikamaru would have been offended if he didn't distinctly remember dragging his feet when he'd actually been a kid. Yeah, troublesome woman, Shikamaru said, huffing slightly. He had to admit to being almost excited to see everyone again, even if they weren't going to be the ones he remembered. Hopefully, he could steer some of them on better paths. Like breaking Sakura and Ino out of their fangirlism sooner. That'd definitely be something on his to-do list. It'd be better for everyone in the long run. Including Shikamaru's sanity. He checked the scroll as he left, smiling ever so slightly at the encouraging notes everyone had left. Have a good day at school. Said Karen. You'd better actually try this time. Said Ino. Do try and bolster little me's confidence? I don't meet Ino for another year or so, maybe try and either get me to meet Ino sooner, or better, befriend me yourself. Said Sakura. It'll be better for my confidence. Said Sakura. Shikamaru had known Sakura had been far from confident before Tsunade got to her, but he hadn't been aware Sakura had met Ino and that was the cause of some of her confidence. Oh well, if Sakura thought it was important, he might as well. One other thing, if you can, try and get me to open up about my home situation. It'll also do wonders for my confidence. I won't say anything here, just nudge her into telling someone please. Said Sakura. Shikamaru had to admit that didn't bode well. He knew Sakura had moved out the second she made Chunin and could support herself, but hadn't known there was a reason behind it other than just wanting to be independent. It seemed there was another thing behind it. He'd have to warn his dad at some point. Or maybe Inoichi. He sealed the scroll away as he approached the edge of the compound. Just had to get to school and see what happened from there. He was greeted by chaos when he opened the door, Ino and Kiba quarreling over something while Choji tried to stop them, Naruto and Sasuke yelling at each other, Shino and Sakura sitting relatively quietly together while the girls around them shrieked their heads off about the bugs on the desk, Hinata trying not to cry, and Irika or any other teacher, nowhere to be seen. Honestly, Shikamaru didn't want to know. So he sat down at his desk and put his head down on the desk to sleep. He actually did sleep, despite the racket the girls were making with their screeching. He was almost impressed with himself. Almost. He'd be more impressed if he hadn't managed to sleep through Guy and Lee going through a screaming match in his previous timeline. Class, as always, was boring, but he hadn't really expected anything else. He was going through this for the second time, and the first time had been boring enough. Have a good day at school? Said Ino. Oh, he could see the cheekiness dripping from that. He was lazy, not blind. You and I both know it was boring. Said Shikamaru. Oh, I have no doubt. Said Ino. Have fun with homework. Said Ino. We don't have any for the first week and a half. Said Shikamaru. He would say that she should know that, but well, not everyone remembered everything. So he'd let her off the hook this time. Did you manage to talk to me? Said Sakura. No, you were busy talking to Shino. Said Shikamaru. Oh yeah, I think I did that, then told my parents about him, then they forbade me from talking to him. I probably won't be talking to him tomorrow, corner me then. And get me talking to Shino again, I think we could have been good friends. Said Sakura. I've talked with Shino more during our poison lessons, and he's mentioned being hurt by your immediate dismissal of him that second day. It really stuck with him. Said Ino. I'll get right on that tomorrow then. Said Shikamaru. Shikamaru sighed. He could see Sakura waiting for something nearby, so he stored the scroll for the moment and walked over. Sakura Haruno, right? She startled, spinning around. Ah. Yes, that's right. You're Nara, right? Shikamaru, he agreed. You know, parents aren't always right. And they don't control who you make friends with. She gave him a confused look, but he could live with confused looks if it spared poor Shino a bit of childhood trauma. They had enough trauma, he could at least get rid of some of it. And this wasn't too much work. If you say so, she said hesitantly. I'm sure, Shikamaru assured her. Have a nice day. You too, she mumbled, waving half-heartedly. Success. Tomorrow he'd see how well it worked. He hoped it had worked right. Chapter 14. Shikamaru finally remembered to check the scroll after he'd finished his lunch. He'd been busy with school most of the morning, trying to convince Sakura to actually tell an adult about her home problems, and doing the barest minimum of homework. It looked like chaos had come to the scroll, as it was mostly filled with what looked like screaming. What on earth? Said Shikamaru, short but heartfelt. What on earth was going on that everyone seemed to be screaming? Shikamaru. Wonderful. Said Tenten. I have no clue what's going on here either. I'm currently hiding out in the Akimichi compound while Danzo scours the place I was before. So I'm behind. Said Tenten. I haven't teleported over because honestly, I'm afraid of what's going on over there. Said Tenten. Understandable. Said Shikamaru. Alright, I got the scroll and am hiding. Said Sakura. So what's going on? Said Shikamaru. Oh, nothing, we just found out Tobi's identity. You know, world-shaking stuff. Said Sakura. Really? Who is he? Said Tenten. Uchiha Obito. Said Sakura. Shikamaru blue-screened for a long moment. What? Obito was dead, or supposed to be. He'd been killed in that rock fall. How in the Sage of Six Paths was he alive? What the frick? Said Tenten. Yeah, we said the same thing. Said Sakura. Well, Kakashi started cussing more than a Kiri sailor could ever hope to do. I would know considering he got in a cussing competition with a Kiri sailor. But close enough. Said Sakura. I am both extremely confused, and thinking that is completely in line with Kakashi. Said Shikamaru. I have the same issue. Said Tenten. How's Itachi taking it? Said Shikamaru. I think he's hiding. I haven't seen him since we figured it out. He'll come out eventually. Said Sakura. He has to eat after all, he is human. Said Sakura. We've been trying to feed him up, although it's not really working. Said Tenten. Choji's rather concerned, despite Itachi having killed the Uchiha clan, it's kind of cute. Said Tenten. And everyone else? Said Shikamaru. We're doing fine mostly. Said Ino. It's a shock though. We haven't told Guy or Lee, of course, they wouldn't remember, or Moegi or Don, since any sort of lapse in attention could be fatal for them. Said Ino. I'm still annoyed at not being told until I checked a scroll. Which I had to steal from Ino. Said Niji. Oh yeah, Niji's here. Mom decided I needed a hand apparently. So he works here sometimes. Said Ino. Hinata didn't take it too well, she's had more nervous breakdowns than ever. Said Niji. Uncle has been very hard on her. Said Niji. That sucked for Hinata. Shikamaru assumed Niji and Ino were taking turns with the scroll, which explained the pauses between one or the other writing. I think he should lay off the poor girl. Said Sakura. You always think that. Said Tenten. I'm always right. Said Sakura in this case and anything involving medical stuff anyway. Said Sakura that's beside the point. Said Shikamaru how is everyone beside the shock. Said Shikamaru alive and honestly, that's all we can ask for at the moment. Said Niji Lee and Guy still can't remember anything ever, I think Lee forgot my name for a little while yesterday. Said Niji color me surprised, I thought he'd never forget you. Said Sakura screw you too. Said Niji oh, so testy. Said Sakura give it up you too. Said Tenten are we going to do anything about Toby? Abito? Said Tenten is there anything we can do? Said Sakura he caused a lot of incidents, initiated the Akatsuki, helped Itachi kill his clan, but in the end, he's another person helping us, someone we need to help kill Danzo when the time comes. Said Sakura so in the end, you're just going to have to keep an eye on him? Said Shikamaru yeah. Plus with Sasuke gone and Itachi basically out of the running because of his health issues, he's pretty much the last chance to revive the Uchiha. If we want to do it at all. Said Sakura which in and of itself is a hotly debated topic. Said Tenten that aside, whatever we decide on that, will ultimately be the Uchiha's decision. That aside, in the end, there's not much we can do. Said Sakura especially if we want to kill Danzo. Said Sakura in the end everything's basically the same except for the fact that we now know what Toby looks like. Said Tenten well that's helpful. Said Shikamaru yep. Said Sakura. Chapter 15. Shikamaru honestly had debated playing sick to get out of going on the field trip. He really did not want to go, to deal with the kids all day as they ran around and bugged him to go with them. He wanted to sleep, to nap in class, not run around wherever they were going. It was to the falconry station, so he supposed it might not be that bad, there were definitely worse places to go. Ultimately he didn't want to bother playing sick, so he didn't, and let his mother hand him his lunch and herd him out the door to meet up with Sakura and Shino, who'd taken to escorting him to the academy. He didn't know why, but if they wanted to, they could. He did not care. Although the company in the morning was kind of nice. I can't wait to see all the hawks we keep there. Sakura said immediately once they started walking. It'll be so cool. Shikamaru knew what hawks were in there, or at least knew all of the species. He didn't know them by name or anything. Konoha used peregrine falcons, red-tailed hawks, kestrels, and occasionally other species of hawks that lived in the area. I hope my dress doesn't get dirty though, Sakura said, eyeing her pretty red dress. Parents only allowed me to go with the assumption I wouldn't do anything improper. She shivered violently for a moment. Plus it's super cold. Shino pulled his backpack around front and reached in, pulling out a pair of clothes and a long jacket. He passed them to Sakura, and she started tearing up. Mother insisted I bring these. She thought it might come in handy. Sakura started sniffling and Shikamaru was grateful he'd thought to bring tissues and pulled one out to hand to her. Thank you, she told Shino thankfully. Thank you so much. Shino nodded somewhat stiffly. He looked almost grateful that Sakura's arms were currently occupied with the clothes and she couldn't hug him easily. Oh, I hope Iruka-sensei lets me change before we go. Sakura said, skipping slightly. And before we leave for the day. He should, Shikamaru said, yawning. He'll be checking and making sure everyone has everything before we go, you can probably change then. Oh. Thank you. Sakura skipped again. Come on, come on. We can't be late. We're coming, Shino assured her, picking up his pace slightly, forcing Shikamaru to also pick up his pace. They reached the academy with plenty of time to spare before class even started, so Sakura asked the two boys to stand outside the bathroom and wait for her. So that's what they were doing. Extremely awkwardly. Shikamaru let his head drop to his chest and closed his eyes, trying not to let his mind stray to imagining how the battle with Danzo was going. If he went there, he had doubts he'd manage to return before the field trip. The door swung open, nearly bashing him in the face before he dodged out of the way. Sakura was tugging on the jacket somewhat self-consciously, It went down past her knees and seemed a bit big on her, the sleeves covering her hands a bit. It's super comfortable, she mused, almost to herself. And loose. I feel like I could totally climb a tree in it. I wouldn't suggest trying without removing the jacket, Shino advised mildly. Which I don't plan on doing, it's super warm. Sakura agreed, hugging herself tightly. Thank you, Shino. Shino was lightly blushing as he inclined his head, and Shikamaru looked at the two suspiciously. Something was going on here, and although it likely wouldn't do anything until they were older, it was still there. We should get to class, Shikamaru interrupted the two's vague attempts at not making eye contact. We don't want to be late. Oh. You're right. Sakura gasped, then grabbed both of their hands to drag them down the hallway to their classroom. They weren't late, although they barely made it into the room before the bell rang to signal the start of the day. Irika gave them a suspicious look, but ignored them in favor of explaining what they were doing and how they were expected to behave. Shikamaru had heard the lecture enough he could probably recite it word for word in his sleep, so he laid his head down on his desk and made a valid attempt to sleep. Sakura elbowed him awake before he could actually sleep, however, so it was in vain. They were rounded up and packed out the door and to the falconry station within an hour, and Shikamaru just plodded along, vaguely attempting to sleep while walking. Whoa, Sakura whispered as they entered. Shikamaru thought it was a bit creepy, every single bird on various perches having turned their heads to stare at them as soon as they came in. Logically, he knew their vision was attracted by movement, but that didn't make it any less creepy. Hello. Who Shikamaru assumed was a keeper, with dark orange hair and bright blue eyes, waved, the falcon on her arm screeching in agreement. You're Irika's class, right? I am Irika, yes. Irika agreed. Shall we begin? Of course. I'm Tomiko, and this is Baka. She's not very smart, but she's a good show bird. The falcon screeched again. Shikamaru wondered if it was trained to do that, or just had really good timing. Say hello, class, Irika instructed. Hello, the class dutifully chorused. All right. Can anyone tell me what kind of bird Baka is? She stroked the bird's head gently, and it nibbled on her fingers in return. Sakura raised her hand, and Tomiko nodded to her. It's a peregrine falcon. Good job, Tomiko praised, and Sakura blushed happily. That's correct, Baka is a peregrine falcon. The fastest bird in the world. Konoha is really the only one to use them because while they are fast, they are fairly delicate birds. She directed Baka to step onto an empty perch, and left the bird there to pick up a different one. This one is Bakuto, can anyone tell me what he is? A great horned owl, Shikamaru said, yawning. He knew of Bakuto, all too well. He was only an umbu bird, so Shikamaru knew of him. He was a very excitable bird. Yep. Bakuto is a great horned owl. Although he does have very strange coloring, so we don't send him out of the village. He's one of two owls here, the other, Akashi, is sleeping at the moment, so we won't bring him out. Tomiko fed Bakuto a piece of meat, and the owl screeched happily, flapping its wings a bit. Not a common species to use, as owls are nocturnal. We are one of two villages that use owls. The other is Suna, with burrowing owls, which are diurnal, or awake during the day. The class did the appropriate oohing and awing. She swapped out her bird again, Bakuto immediately settling down and going to sleep once he'd been settled on a perch. This one is a kestrel, she's named Taka because she thinks she can fight an eagle. Needless to say, she is just that much dumber than Baka. She is currently busy recovering from her most recent eagle fight, and hasn't been sent out in a couple of months. Shikamaru stared at the bird. Wow, he found stupidity incarnate in bird form. Amazing. And this is Noya. Shikamaru stared at the hawk with its weird yellow streak in its head feathers. An interesting name. Noya screeched at them, doing what Shikamaru figured was probably a threat display, then was promptly soothed by Tomiko running a finger down his head and back. He's enthusiastic, but luckily doesn't pick a fight with anything that will actually kill him. Tomiko returned Noya to his perch, then picked up a box and offered it to the kids. Now who wants to hold a hawk or falcon? Sakura bounced forward first, letting Tomiko carefully strap the thick glove to her arm, as it was much too big on her. What kind of bird do you want to hold? Tomiko asked Sakura. Sakura looked amazed. I can pick? Sure. Just not the owls, looks like Bakuto finally went to sleep. A kestrel. Sakura decided. All right, Tomiko encouraged Taka onto her arm. Hold up your arm like this, and I'll lead her onto your glove, all right? Sakura nodded, holding her arm up then freezing. Tomiko nudged Taka onto Sakura's arm, then hovered nearby as Taka shifted around, then finally settled in, seeming to be all right with this new arrangement. Shikamaru didn't really feel like holding a bird of prey, but Irika made it clear it was mandatory, so he didn't really have a choice. So he picked a falcon, and had a staring contest with said falcon. Chapter 16. So don't get on me for being paranoid, but after hearing Obito's whole mess of a backstory, I have suspicions. Said Sakura. Understandable. Said Shikamaru. I have more than a few. Said Tenten. For one, I doubt he's human, or even anything close to it. Said Tenten. Yeah, I agree with that statement. Said Sakura. You're going to have to outline the Obito backstory thing, I think I missed it. Said Niji. Basically, Obito's Kakashi's childhood friend, right? So they were on this team with this third girl, Rin, and Minato Namikaze was their sensei. So they had this mission to Kanobi Bridge, and during it, Obito was half crushed under a rock due to an incident with some Iwa soldier. Said Sakura. That's how he got his Sharingan. Said Tenten. Yeah. So later, Rin gets the Sanbai sealed into her, the three-tailed turtle Biju if you're wondering, and is set basically as a timed bomb to go off once they reached Konoha. She killed herself on Kakashi's Chidori, and Obito saw it happen, because he'd escaped after being healed mostly by this one weird dude claiming to be Madara, who died later. Then he awakened the super weird second stage Sharingan, and so did Kakashi. Said Sakura. He then returned to the cave and proceeded to train with Zetsu and Madara, and then the rest is history I suppose. Said Sakura. History indeed. Said Tenten. If he's that ancient, I suggest making a seal to contain him. Said Shikamaru. All right, I'll get to work on it quickly. Modifying a body scroll should be fine. I'll say when I think it's done, but we won't know until we try it on him. Said Tenten. We'll keep him distracted then. Said Sakura. Hurry though, people are getting antsy. Said Sakura. I'll do my best. Said Tenten. That covered that then, Shikamaru supposed. He sealed away the scroll, then rolled out of his bed. There wasn't school today, but they had a much different thing to do today. Shino and him were going to go ask the KPF to check Sakura's household, Shikamaru having finally thought to inform them he knew a couple Uchiha. Shino met him at the entrance of the Nara compound, and then Shursui met the two at the entrance of the Uchiha compound. So, finally trying to get some justice for your friend? Shursui asked, teasingly elbowing Shikamaru in the ribs. You do not get to tease me about anything, Shikamaru yawned. Shino was the one to bring her another set of clothes for the field trip. Shursui looked absolutely delighted at this tidbit of information, and spent the rest of the walk badgering the full story out of them. The chat with Fugaku went well, and he promised to look into Sakura's parents thoroughly. Shikamaru was relieved to say the least, not that he really thought that it'd be refused, more that he'd worried Fugaku would try and turn it into a clan affair. He hadn't, and thus Shikamaru was relieved. He was totally in good mood today. Shursui almost tripped over a loose stone, but recovered in time to not fall on his face. Shikamaru and Shino, thus alerted to the danger, stepped over the stone in question easily. That was a good mood? Shino asked, mild skepticism really only clear in his tone to Shikamaru, who'd known his elder version for years. And tiny Shino was worse at hiding his emotions, although not by all that much. Yeah, he wasn't outright glaring at us. Shursui shrugged, skipping over a different stone. Totally a good mood. Sure, Shikamaru replied, yawning. If you say so. I do say so. Shursui insisted. Oh, hey, we're at the Aburim compound. We are, Shino noted. How observant of you. Shikamaru snickered and Shursui pouted. How rude. I'm older than you and a jounin. Show a bit of respect. It was pretty clear he was just making a mock fuss, puffing out his chest and pulling up to his full height. Sure. Shino turned and walked into the compound, effectively dismissing them. Shikamaru huffed in amusement at his dry tone, the word tossed over his shoulder as if he didn't care. Which he probably didn't. So rude. Shursui mock pouted. You'll live, Shikamaru said, deadpan. I'm sure you won't have too much of an issue brushing off the teasing of an 8-year-old. Of course. As a 16-year-old, I know better than to antagonize children. You're a child to me, Shikamaru replied, completely deadpan. He would have turned 20 this year if he wasn't here. As it was, he was turning 8, but going on 20. Shursui narrowed his eyes at him, but didn't pick the fight. Shikamaru promptly ignored him and opted to disappear into the Nara compound as soon as they passed it, ducking into his bedroom to check the scroll. Anything yet? Said Shikamaru almost. We're trying to trick him into the seal. So far we've said it was a seal like the one that sent you back. I used a couple of similar glyphs, so it's not like he can really tell the difference. Said Tenten almost said Tenten there. Said Tenten got him? Said Shikamaru snugger than a bug in a trap. He's caught and he can't get out. It'll be a while before the seal absorbs him properly, but he's stuck in place in the meantime. Sakura and Karen are pouring in chakra, and I'll swap out with Karen in a few minutes to contribute. Everyone'll do their bit to keep the scroll active and sucking him in. Said Tenten good luck. Said Shikamaru we're long past luck at this point. At this point it's just skill that's the reason we're still here. Said Tenten of course. Have fun. Said Shikamaru you too? Said Tenten. Chapter 17. Today's the day. Said Shikamaru yeah no kidding? Said Tenten day before the Uchiha massacre was in your timeline. Said Shikamaru we're going to kill Danzo today. Said Tenten or at least try. Said Tenten stay safe. Said Shikamaru I won't be in the main fighting, I'm in case he tries to get away. I marked him a while ago. Was on accident then, but it has proved useful. Said Tenten have fun. Said Shikamaru Shikamaru rolled up the scroll. He wouldn't be able to pay attention in class today, that much was for sure, but it wasn't like he ever did anyway. He nodded cordially to his mother as he left the house, stomach rolling over in his stomach in what felt a bit like anxiety, and he didn't really feel like eating. Sakura and Shino didn't seem to notice his unease, which was somewhat reassuring, so he tried to sink into the familiar friendship and ignore the mild anxiety coming from remembering his friends were fighting a really old bastard who didn't know how to keep his hands to himself when it came to Sharingan. So you're doing better, right Sakura? Shikamaru asked, wanting to know that at least one person he cared about was doing all right. HM? Oh yeah. Shino's house is way better than mine was. She leaned in conspiratorially, and Shikamaru let her. We have bunk beds. We can totally have a sleepover or something. That's cool, Shikamaru decided, yawning. He resisted the urge to check the scroll again. He had to give them until at least the end of the day. Then he would check. Then he would check and hopefully know the outcome of the battle. It's awesome. Sakura replied dreamily. There's no yelling, and I can totally steal Shino's clothes if I want. Even if they don't fit all that well, they're a bit big. That's why you have your own clothes, Shino replied mildly stiffly. So that they fit. I know. Sakura said, laughing. But yours are already worn in and way more comfortable. Then wear yours, Shino pointed out logically. They won't get worn in otherwise. He has a point, Shikamaru felt the need to add. Sakura puffed out her cheeks. Now I'm just being bullied. Just wear your own clothes, Shikamaru replied tiredly. It's not that hard. She just stuck her tongue out at both of them, pretending to ignore them completely. As she was the only one who really started conversations, Shino being too shy and socially awkward too, and Shikamaru being too lazy too, they settled into comfortable silence the rest of the way. Shikamaru stared up at the academy sign tiredly for a long moment before hurriedly catching back up to his friends as they walked ahead. He'd been here, on this day, years before. Then he'd been unknowing, couldn't have known about the tragedy that would happen then. It wouldn't happen here. Shursui was still alive, and the Uchiha were closer with the village than ever, each clan remembering what the Uchiha had done. After all, they were half the clans that actually began this village. But now, the sun was bright overhead, and no blood would be spilled today. That'd be such a nice, mean, place to end it. Fortunately for you all, I'm not so mean as to intentionally leave you without knowing what happened. Shikamaru held back from actually rushing home. It wouldn't do for him to ruin his lazy reputation. He would hold on to it come the apocalypse. Upon reaching home, however, he did immediately disappear into his bedroom, sprouting off homework in passing to his mother as a vague explanation. The fact he had completed all of said homework in class was a moot point his mother didn't need to know. He pulled out the scroll quickly, unrolling it and checking for new messages. Nothing yet. Anything? Said Shikamaru a long pause, then Tenten's handwriting started appearing. We're almost all alive. Danzo is dead. Said Tenten. Who are the casualties then? Said Shikamaru he hoped it wasn't any of the Konoha 12. It'd better not be. Itachi Uchiha died getting the final killing blow on Danzo. Said Tenten. Sakura's currently busy getting the Uchiha ritual rites out of Obito, and Karen is trying to heal everyone. Her strength of 100 seal is coming in very handy at the moment. Said Tenten. Were you injured? Said Shikamaru. A bit. My leg was broken and I have 3 broken ribs, so it kind of hurts to breath, but Karen fixed the leg and Sakura will do the ribs after she finishes with Obito. He's the worst off probably, has a lot of deep cuts and one arm is nearly gone. He's healing though. Said Tenten. As long as everyone's alive. Said Shikamaru. He breathed a sigh of relief, relaxing slightly, a tension he knew he'd been holding all day draining away. No one except Itachi was dead at the moment, and they'd all known Itachi had a ticking timer. He was going to die in a couple months anyway because of whatever was going on with his lungs. Sakura and Karen hadn't been able to fix it and had given him 4 or 5 months at most. He just died 3 months before he was supposed to. On the plus side, I think Obito has decided this one lady from the hospital is the coolest thing ever because she just freaking decked Danzo when he turned his back on her. It was epic. Said Tenten. Wow. Who was it? Said Shikamaru. Nintami. Who else? Who else has the courage and skill to just deck Danzo in the face? Obito had been holding him still at that moment, which was probably why she was able to get in such a clean hit, and also probably why he's smitten. It's hilarious to watch though. Said Tenten. Shikamaru couldn't hold back a snort. Love blossoms everywhere, he supposed. Especially with Uchiha. I'm glad you're all safe. Said Shikamaru. We are too. Said Tenten. The end.
Thank you for your views, likes, subscriptions, and overall support of my ongoing efforts to bring great content to all of you. Check out my Patreon for more mature fanfiction. The link is in the description and like everywhere on my channel.